Hello everyone and welcome to Semi Homesteading with Abby. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this video. As you can tell from the title, I just wanted to take you through a relaxing day in the kitchen. I had a few things that I needed to do, so I just decided I wanted to do like a nice relaxing voiceover video. In all reality, the sounds, if you hear the raw audio of this video, it's not all that relaxing. We had like Bluey going on in the background, my son was running around, there was a lot going on, so I just decided that I would mute all these and make it a little bit more peaceful and just take you through what I did in the kitchen this day. So the first thing I wanted to do was make pizza sauce with the tomatoes from my garden, which, by the way, I've been so hyped that my garden is producing these tomatoes. So I weighed out the tomatoes. I had about 4.5 pounds, and I started to boil some water so that I could blanch them. Again, blanching has changed my life. I used to try to just peel stuff and it just doesn't work well at all. So I put all the tomatoes into a boiling, a pot of rolling boiling water just for about 30 to 45 seconds until the skins of the where I cut kind of peel up. And while those were boiling, I just prepped a bowl of ice water and spilled a decent amount in my kitchen. I then just plopped each tomato into the ice water to stop the cooking immediately. And I had to do this kind of in waves, so I didn't have a big enough bowl. That's totally fine. I just plopped them in and then took them out and rested them on a cutting board while I processed the other tomatoes. So this went pretty smoothly, and again, this whole process just makes me so excited that I grew my own tomatoes. I'm processing them myself. I'm blanching them. The whole process of processing something that you grew is very, very rewarding. So the next thing I did after that was just peel off the tomato skins. They were pretty easy. In hindsight, I probably should have boiled them a little bit longer. Most of them were easy, but some of them were a little tougher than I had thought. All right, the next step in the process was to blend them and puree all the tomatoes. Now, I left the seeds in, but I cored, the hard top part of each tomato. So there are some seeds in my tomato paste. I don't know if that's actually recommended for canning pizza sauce, but we're gonna use the pizza sauce pretty quickly, so I'm not water boiling canning this, so I didn't really care if it was like a canning safe recipe. We're gonna have pizza within the next week. So I just put all my tomatoes into the blender, pureed it, and I was really concerned that the color was too light. I used tomatoes that were kind of on the edge of being ripe, and in hindsight, I probably would have waited a day or two more. But at this point, I was kind of nervous because, as you can see, the puree is pretty darn light. This ended up not being a problem. Everything turned out fine. So if your puree is also light, don't worry about it. I just poured it into a big pot on like medium heat, and this is actually going to cook for 4 hours after I season it. So I added onion powder, I think garlic powder or minced garlic, sugar, and Italian seasoning. I will link this recipe below. I ended up using a lot more Italian seasoning, but basically you just stir this up and wait for 4 hours for it to simmer down. There's a lot of liquid that you need to boil off. Also, a note, I used a mix of Roma and beefsteak tomatoes because that's what I had on hand. They say to use Roma, and you probably have to cook it for a little bit less time if you use Roma because it has less liquid in it to begin with. So as you can see, I also added lemon juice and salt. Again, I'll add the whole recipe below, but this is how it kind of started. It was very, very thin, very liquidy. As you can tell, it's bubbling up. This was after probably an hour and a half of it cooking. It's getting a little bit thicker, and then I'll check back in a little bit to show the final product. Okay, the next thing that I needed to do is prepare dinner. So actually between, stirring the pizza sauce and what you're seeing now, I had to go to the store, pick up my groceries, and I'm making a roast. So this is a roast from a quarter of a cow that we got back like, I think 6 or 7 months ago. So I'm trying to go through all of it before any of it goes bad. But basically, this is the easiest recipe of all time. You put the roast in a slow cooker, you pour au jus mix on it, you pour Hidden Valley Ranch mix on top of it, and then you put a quarter of a cup of butter, turn it on low heat, and you just let it sit for 8 hours. Now, I did misread the recipe, and I thought it said high heat, so for 4 of those hours it was on high heat, and it did get a little bit burned on one side. I ended up putting like some chicken broth in there or beef broth before I realized, oh, I'm actually doing it on high and it's supposed to be low. So just a note, do it low. We salvaged most of it, it was fine, but definitely better if you actually follow the recipe and do low heat. Okay, then the last thing I wanted to do was pickle some cucumbers and make some pickles. So we had some great cucumbers ready to go. I have been so excited. My husband absolutely loves pickles, and we finally found the perfect spice mixture. It's this Amish pickling spice we use. It's, you know, equal cups water and vinegar, and then you add pickling spice, sugar, and I think that, oh, and sweet onions. And this time he wanted to try a spicy version, so I also added a habanero pepper, and he had rave reviews about this recipe. So again, I will link this recipe below, but essentially I just used what was online. I halved the sugar because he doesn't like it that sweet, and then I added a habanero pepper, as you can see here. Okay, my son's down for a nap, so we can do a little update. I have the roast going. It's looking good. I added a little chicken broth because I feel like it was possibly burning. Pizza sauce is definitely looking thicker, but we got a couple hours left. This is how the final pickle jars looked before I added the liquid. So I will take you through making the liquid. Again, this is 2 cups of water that I just added. You can do either distilled white vinegar or apple cider vinegar, but I used distilled white for this, 2 cups of that, so equal parts. Then I grabbed the sugar, and I just did about a quarter of a cup of sugar, did a couple tablespoons of salt, and then about 3 teaspoons of the Amish pickling spice. I'm not gonna water boil can my pickles today because these ones I think are gonna be the best ones yet. We're gonna just eat these first. Pretty sure my husband's gonna eat them pretty quickly. So I'm not gonna actually do the water bath. I'm just going to eat them within a couple weeks. Once my pickles were done, in an hour or two later, I checked back at the pizza sauce. It looks fantastic. I really didn't think from that light puree it was going to turn out this dark and colorful. We taste tested it. We added a few more spices as we went, mostly the Italian seasoning and I think a little bit more onion powder. And then I just scooped it into my 2 jars. Now that was 4.5 pounds of tomatoes and it made 2 jars. So definitely it cooks down a lot, but this was a great day in the kitchen. It was so satisfying to make things for my garden that I was preserving. My stash is starting to build up of, you know, foods that I can have in my basement that are good for a year, good throughout winter. I'm so excited to be learning all these things. So thank you all so much for watching this relaxing day in my kitchen. I hope you subscribe to my channel and stick around. Thank you all so much for being here. I'll see you next week for another video. Bye, everyone.